They say heartbreak doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just walks beside you, smiling, pretending everything's fine, until it isn't. I learned that truth at the airport. "May," my daughter-in-law said, adjusting her sunglasses like she was shielding herself from more than sunlight. "After thinking about it, we figured it'd be better if you didn't come with us. It's just a small family thing this time." She said it so smoothly I almost believed her. Almost. I blinked, clutching my little travel pouch like it was proof I belonged. "What do you mean, sweetheart? You said..." She cut me off, voice light but cold. "Oh, don't worry. We'll live stream the ceremony. You'll see everything." And that was it. No argument. No second glance. Just a smile. The polite, distant kind people give when they've already moved on. They walked toward the security checkpoint. My son, Daniel, trailed behind her. He didn't look back either. I stood there alone in the middle of Atlanta's Hartsfield, Jackson Airport, the busiest place in the world, and somehow I'd never felt smaller. No suitcase. No boarding pass. Just a printed itinerary that I now realized was for show. The trip I'd been promised. It was never meant for me. The announcements echoed overhead. "Flight 228 to Miami now boarding. Passengers with children, please proceed to gate B14. It all sounded distant, like I was underwater. People rushed around, laughing, talking, dragging luggage that clattered against the tile. Just stood there. One woman gave me a sympathetic half-smile before her eyes flicked down to the empty space beside me. No suitcase, no family, and she turned away quickly. That hurt more than I expected. A few hours earlier, I'd woken up thinking I was part of something again. Daniel and his wife, Kendra, had called it a healing trip after the funeral. They said it'd help me breathe again, move forward. My husband, Ray, had been gone barely 2 months. 41 years of marriage. Gone in a blink. We buried him on a Monday. It rained so hard that day, I thought even heaven was mourning. When they told me about the trip, I wanted to believe them. I sold the last bracelet Ray ever gave me. Small gold with a little heart charm, to help pay for my ticket. "We're all pitching in," they said. Family effort. But there was never a family effort. There was just effort, mine. Now here I was, standing in the middle of an airport with nothing but a purse and the sound of other people's lives moving on. I wanted to call someone, anyone. But who? My sister passed years ago. My old friends had families of their own. And even if I could reach someone, what would I say? "Hey, I just got left behind by my own son." Well, I wouldn't let that humiliation leave this airport. I found a bench near the far wall, sat down, straightened my back, and folded my hands in my lap like I was waiting on purpose. Because if there's one thing I still had left, it was dignity. What they didn't know, what I had almost forgotten, was that tucked deep inside my purse, behind a handful of peppermints and a folded tissue, was an envelope. Ray's handwriting on the front. Inside it, something he'd once called our break glass in case of fire fund. I ran my fingers over the crease. Maybe they thought they'd left me with nothing. But they were wrong. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the moment I decided to start telling it myself. You don't really feel the moment your heart breaks. It's quiet. Doesn't make a sound. You just look around and realize that everything familiar has somehow turned into noise. I sat there in that airport for what felt like hours. Maybe it was minutes, I don't know. My legs felt like stone, my chest hollow. The announcement board flickered above me, listing flights to places that all sounded like freedom. I wasn't on any of them. A little boy dropped his toy car nearby, and his mother laughed, bending to pick it up. That small sound, her laughter, it hit me harder than I expected. That used to be me. The woman who laughed easily. The one with plans, with people waiting for her somewhere. Not anymore. I took out my phone, stared at it like it might explain what had just happened. No messages. No missed calls. Course not. Daniel and Kendra were probably sipping coffee in some first-class lounge, uploading smiling photos with the caption, "Family time." Much needed. Family time. I pressed the power button and turned the screen black. I didn't want to see the reflection looking back at me. 2 months. That's all it had been since Ray's funeral. 2 months of casseroles I didn't eat, phone calls I didn't answer, and nights I sat up talking to his photo as if grief had an ear. When Daniel suggested a trip, it felt like a lifeline. He said, "Mom, you need some sun, something to help you breathe again." And I believed him. Because that's what mothers do. They believe their sons, even when they shouldn't. I used the money from selling Ray's bracelet. It was a delicate thing. Gold, simple, beautiful, like the life we had built together. I told myself it was for the family, for healing. I didn't realize I was paying for my own humiliation. Now I sat in the terminal, clutching the purse that suddenly felt too light. My hand brushed against the small envelope again, the one with Ray's handwriting. His voice echoed in my memory. "Just in case, May. Life's unpredictable." He had no idea how right he'd been. I stood up. Slowly. The world tilted for a second, then steadied. My eyes burned, but no tears came. Not here. Not where strangers could see. I walked toward the exit, my shoes clicking on the cold tile. The sound kept me grounded. Blick. Up. Breathe. Repeat. Outside, the air hit me, humid, alive, real. I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address I hadn't spoken in years. 287 Jefferson Street, I said. He nodded and pulled away from the curb. The city blurred past the window. Neon signs, traffic lights, lives happening at full speed. I sat in the back seat and thought about all the times I'd been told to move on. That's the thing about loss. Everyone wants you to move on, but no one tells you where to go. As the cab turned onto Jefferson, I saw it. The small law office with a faded blue awning. Ray's old friend, Henry Wade, still practiced there. His words from years ago echoed in my head. "If you ever need help, May, come find me." And now I was finally taking him up on that. Because I'd been left behind once. But I wasn't about to let them take the rest of me too. Henry Wade hadn't changed much. His hair was thinner, his glasses thicker, but that steady calm he carried, the one Ray always said came from years of seeing too much, was still there. "May Hart," he said, standing from behind his desk. "I'll be damned. It's been what, 10 years? Closer to 12, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You still making miracles out of paperwork?" He chuckled. "Trying to. But it's not as easy without Ray around to double-check my math." That name, Ray, it hit me like a soft punch. I smiled because crying wasn't an option right now. "I need to change my will," I said simply, setting my purse on the chair beside me. Henry's eyebrows lifted. "That's a strong opener. You sure you don't want coffee first?" I shook my head. "No coffee. Just the change." He leaned back, studying me the way only old friends can. Not prying, just trying to read the weather inside your eyes. "All right," he said slowly. "Tell me what you want to do." "I want my son and his wife removed from every part of it." No hesitation. The words came out clean and sharp. Henry nodded once, the pen in his hand tapping against a yellow legal pad. "You're sure about this?" "Absolutely." He didn't ask why. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he saw it in the way I sat. Too still, too straight, like a woman holding herself together with sheer willpower. "I want it all redirected," I continued. "To an organization. Something that helps older women, people like me. You know, the ones who are forgotten when they stop being useful." He scribbled something down. "There's a non-profit called Second Haven. They specialize in elder advocacy, housing, legal aid, all that. I've worked with them before." "Perfect," I said. "I'll leave everything to them. The house, the land, the savings. All of it." For a second, silence filled the office. The only sound was the faint hum of the old ceiling fan spinning above us. Henry finally spoke, his voice gentler now. "May, I don't know what happened, but I hope you're not doing this out of anger." I looked him straight in the eye. "No, Henry. I'm doing it out of clarity." He nodded slowly, accepting that. "All right then. Let's get to work." We went through the documents line by line, revising every name, every clause, Every signature that once tied my future to people who had already walked away from me. It took over an hour, but when it was done, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Like, not happy. Not yet. But free. In the quiet, dangerous way freedom feels when you've earned it. I signed the last page, and Henry slid a copy across the desk. "This makes it official," he said. "I'll file the final paperwork in the morning." "Thank you," I said, standing. My knees ached, but my heart felt steady. As I turned to leave, Henry said, "May, whatever this is, I hope it leads you somewhere better." "It already has," I said softly. Outside, the sun was low, a honey-colored glow spilling across the cracked sidewalk. I stood there a long moment, letting the warmth touch my face. For the first time in years, no one was waiting for me. And somehow that wasn't sad. It was peaceful. That night, in a small motel off the highway, I laid the signed papers on the nightstand beside Ray's photo. "Guess we're doing this our way now," I whispered. The next morning I woke up lighter. Not younger, not unbroken, just lighter. But peace has a price. And before long, mine came knocking, in the form of a phone call I should have ignored. It was the third morning since I'd signed the papers. The motel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet, but to me, it smelled like freedom. I'd been waking up early, sitting by the small window with instant coffee, watching the sun rise over the gas station across the street. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Then the phone rang. At first, I thought it was the motel desk. Maybe a wrong number, maybe a wake-up call meant for someone else. But the moment I heard the voice, my stomach turned. "Mom." "Daniel." I said nothing. The sound of his voice, that half-guilty, half-entitled tone, hit every nerve I'd tried to numb. "Mom, are you there?" he asked again, a little sharper this time. I finally exhaled. "I'm here." "Oh, thank God," he said quickly. "Listen, about the other day." "The other day?" I interrupted, my voice colder than I intended. "You mean the day you left me at an airport without a ticket or a suitcase?" He sighed, that long, tired sigh of someone who's used to talking over people's pain. "Mom, please don't make this bigger than it was. It was a misunderstanding." Kendra thought what? Snap. That I'd just vanish quietly. Make it easy for her. There was a pause. Then a quieter voice, the one he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You've just been struggling since Dad passed. We thought you needed space." I almost laughed. They'd given me all the space in the world. A terminal full of it. "I see," I said, forcing calm into my tone. "So you decided for me." "Mom." "Daniel," I cut in. "I don't need you to explain it. I understand perfectly." There was silence on the other end, heavy and uncertain. Then finally, "Can we just talk? Maybe meet for dinner? I'll come by the house." "The house isn't yours to come by," I said quietly. "What?" "I've made some changes. You don't need to worry about the house, the land, or anything else anymore." "What are you talking about?" His voice cracked, the mask slipping for the first time. "Mom, what did you do?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I said. "Took back what's mine." There was panic in his voice now. "You didn't change anything legally, did you?" I smiled to myself. "I'm not as helpless as you think, Daniel." "Mom, please. You're upset. We can fix this." "No," I said. "You can't fix what you broke." Hung up. The phone rang again. Then 5 more times after that. I turned the sound off and sat in silence, listening instead to the faint hum of cars on the highway. Outside, the day was already burning hot. I stood by the window and thought about what Henry had said. "I hope this leads you somewhere better." Maybe better wasn't a place. Maybe it was just the moment you stopped waiting for someone to come back. I picked up the photo of Ray from the nightstand. His smile still had that calm mischief in it, the look of a man who always knew how things would turn out. "Well," I said softly, "you'd be proud of me, love." I finally stopped asking for permission. But as I set the picture down, something inside me shifted. A strange feeling. Not guilt exactly, but a tremor of unfinished business. Because even though I'd closed one door, I could sense another one opening. And whatever was waiting on the other side, it was already coming for me. You can always tell when an apology isn't really an apology. It's in the tone, that careful mix of guilt and self-preservation. It's not "I'm sorry for what I did." It's "I'm sorry you noticed." 3 days after Daniel's first call, I got another one. Then another. Then a text that simply said, "We just want to talk, Mom. You're overreacting." Overreacting. That word had followed me my whole life. Whenever I spoke up, whenever I dared to feel something too loudly, someone, a boss, a friend, even Ray sometimes, would toss it at me like a bucket of cold water. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't reply. I didn't answer the calls either. Silence can be louder than shouting, and I was finally learning how to use it. By the 4th day, the tone of Daniel's messages changed. The sweetness started to rot. "Mom, if you've done something stupid with your will, I swear. Kendra's really upset. We didn't mean to hurt you. Just call us back before things go too far." Too far. It made me laugh. A real bitter laugh that echoed through the small motel room. Because what they called too far was simply me standing up. That morning I drove back into town. I wasn't running away anymore. I had an appointment with Henry to finalize the notarized copies of the new documents. As he slid the sealed envelope across the desk, he gave me a look, half pride, half warning. "You sure you're ready for what might come next?" he asked. "I'm ready for whatever's mine," I said. When I got back to the motel, the voicemail light on my phone was blinking. 5 messages. All from Daniel. The last one. That's the one that froze me. "Mom, if you go through with this, we'll contest it." "I'm serious. You're not thinking clearly. Kendra says we can talk to someone about getting a power of attorney if you keep acting like this. We don't want to, but don't push us." Power of attorney. They were planning to take legal control over me. Over my life. Over the woman who raised him. For a moment, I felt something inside me crack open. But it wasn't fear. It was clarity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up at the desk by the window, the motel light buzzing overhead, and drafted my next move. If they thought they could take away what little independence I had left, they didn't know me at all. Ray used to say, "May, you don't fight with noise. You fight with preparation." So that's what I did. By sunrise I had made a list. Bank passwords, safety deposit details, new mailing address. All changed. I filed a report with my lawyer documenting the harassment. And then I called a realtor about selling the old house. If Daniel and Kendra wanted control, they were about to find out how little of it they actually had. The sun came up, warm and blinding through the thin motel curtains. I poured myself a cup of instant coffee and smiled for the first time in days. Let them come looking. By the time they found me, I'd be somewhere they could never reach. Not physically, not legally, not emotionally. Because this time I wasn't running away. I was running ahead. It's strange, walking back into a house you built with someone you loved. Every corner knows your story. The arguments, the laughter, the ghosts. When I unlocked the front door that morning, the air inside felt heavy. Stale, like it hadn't been breathed in weeks. The curtains were still half drawn, and a thin line of sunlight cut through the dust floating in the living room. This house had once been my pride. Ray and I laid the tiles in the kitchen ourselves. Crookedly but proudly. We painted the walls that pale buttercream because he said it looked like morning light. Now, it looked like a memory someone else had forgotten to clean up. I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was here for closure. I had already arranged for the moving truck. Quiet, discreet, from a town over so no one would recognize the company name. The men were polite, efficient, the kind who didn't ask questions they didn't need answers to. "I'll just be taking a few things," I told them. They nodded. Few things. Ray's favorite chair. My mother's quilt. The box of photo albums. The wedding album, though I hesitated on that one for a while. His navy cap from his service days. My old typewriter. Nothing more. The rest could stay. Because the truth was, I didn't need reminders anymore. I carried those memories with me. In the ache of my hands, in the rhythm of my heartbeat when I heard his favorite song on the radio. I walked through each room one last time. The kitchen where we'd once danced barefoot to old country songs. The hallway where Ray had fallen that terrible morning, coffee still warm in his hand. Our bedroom, smaller than I remembered, lonelier too. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I left a note on the kitchen counter beside the spare key. Don't call. Don't come looking. I'm fine. May. No signature. No explanation. Just that. By noon the truck was loaded. By 1 the papers were signed. The realtor, a kind woman with a soft drawl and sharp eyes, handled everything without judgment. You sure you don't want to wait for your son to sign too? She asked. I'm sure, I said. The sale wasn't big, but it was enough. Enough to start again somewhere quiet, somewhere warm, somewhere where no one would look at me with pity or pretend concern. I drove out of the neighborhood with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I was pulling into a place called Willow Haven, an independent living community for seniors who still wanted life on their own terms. The sign out front read, Dignity, Community, Home. The woman at the front desk smiled when I walked in. Mrs. Hart, we've been expecting you. Welcome. For the first time in months, someone said my name like it mattered. My new apartment was small but full of light, a corner unit that overlooked a garden filled with marigolds. My boxes were already waiting. On the table sat a small welcome basket with a handwritten note. Thank you for helping make this place possible. And that's when I realized. The donation I'd made through Second Haven had helped fund this very building. I wasn't just finding a new home. I'd built one for myself and others like me. That night as I unpacked, I whispered into the quiet room. We made it, Ray. We really made it. I thought the story might end there. A clean break, a quiet peace. But peace never lasts long when guilt finally catches up to the ones who caused it. And mine was already on its way. Not through letters this time, but through voices that didn't know when to stop calling. At Willow Haven, mornings felt different. Soft sunlight spilled through my window, the air smelled faintly of coffee and clean laundry, and for the first time in years I didn't wake up to silence. I woke up to laughter echoing down the hall. People here said hello like they meant it. There was Helen from down the corridor, who swore she could still beat anyone at bridge, and Edna, who called everyone darlin', whether she liked you or not. I even joined the Thursday watercolor class, though my flowers looked more like bruised clouds than roses. But I was happy, peacefully happy, until the phone calls started again. The first one came just before dinner on a Friday. My phone buzzed across the nightstand. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. May, came Daniel's voice, softer now like he'd been rehearsing sorrow. Please. We just want to talk. I didn't reply. He sighed. We got the letter from your lawyer. You really went through with it. Yes, I said quietly. I did. Mom, why are you doing this? You're punishing us for one mistake. One mistake. I repeated. My voice cracked before I caught it. You left me at an airport, Daniel. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. He didn't answer right away. I could hear Kendra whispering something in the background. That sharp, impatient hiss she used when she thought no one was listening. Mom, Daniel said finally. We're sorry. But this is cruel. You've cut us out of everything. The house, the savings, everything. The kids. Don't, I interrupted. Don't use the kids. Mom, please, he said, voice rising. At least let us keep the land behind the house. The garden. You know what it means to us. Closed my eyes. The garden. The same one they never invited me to help plant. The same one Kendra posted about online as her peaceful retreat, without ever mentioning who paid for the soil, the tools, the fences. No, I said simply. It's not yours anymore. He exhaled sharply, his temper showing. You're making a mistake. We're your family, Mom. You don't turn your back on family. I smiled bitterly. Funny. I was thinking the same thing at the airport. Then I hung up. The silence after was thick. It filled the room like fog. My hands trembled a little, but I didn't regret it. Later that evening, Helen knocked on my door. "You missed bingo, sugar," she said. "That's not like you." I tried to smile. "Just wasn't in the mood tonight." She studied me for a moment, her eyes sharper than her soft tone. "You got ghosts in your phone again." I nodded. "Let 'em haunt themselves," she said simply, and handed me a mug of chamomile tea. "You can't drink peace if you keep stirring the past." That night, I left my phone in a drawer and sat by the window instead. Outside, the courtyard lights glowed softly, fireflies weaving in and out of the hedges. I thought of Ray, of what he'd say if he could see me now. Probably something simple like, "Told you they'd show up once they needed something." He'd be right, because when people lose access to your kindness, they suddenly remember how to sound like family. I wasn't falling for that again. Still, a small part of me, the mother part, ached. That's the cruelest thing about betrayal. It doesn't erase the love, it just changes its shape. I took a slow breath, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to the quiet, "Let them come." Because this time, I wasn't the woman waiting at an airport. I was the one holding the gate. You can always tell when guilt turns into desperation. It's in the way people start rewriting history. One minute they're sorry. The next, they're the victims of your boundaries. The following week I got an email. Subject line, "Please, Mom." I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. "Mom, I don't even know how to start this. We didn't mean for things to go this far. Kendra says you're angry, and I get that, but this, removing us from everything, isn't fair. We made mistakes, but you're still our mother. You raised me. You love the kids. Please don't do this to them." There was more, a lot more. Words about forgiveness and family and how things can go back to normal. Normal. That word hit me like ice. Normal was them taking and me giving. Normal was being treated like a relic instead of a person. Normal was me apologizing for being hurt. I deleted the email. But I didn't block him. Not yet. Later that afternoon, I went down to the community garden. Helen was already there, her sleeves rolled up, humming some old jazz tune as she trimmed the lavender. "You look like someone who just read bad news," she said without looking up. "Not bad," I said. "Just familiar." Helen snorted. "That's the worst kind." We worked in silence for a while. The soil was warm under my hands, soft and alive. It reminded me that I could still grow things that weren't built on guilt. When I got back to my room, there was another message waiting. This time from Kendra. "May, I've tried to stay out of this, but Daniel's hurting. You know how sensitive he is. We didn't mean to upset you, but you've taken this too far. Think about what Ray would want. He'd want family together, not torn apart." She dared to use his name. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Ray would have wanted family together, yes, but not like that. Not the kind of family that leaves you stranded and calls it space. I typed out a reply. Then deleted it. Then typed it again. Then stopped. They didn't deserve my words. Not anymore. That night, I lay awake thinking about something Henry said weeks earlier. Some people don't want forgiveness. They want access. And he was right. Daniel and Kendra didn't want to fix things. They wanted their old leverage back. Around midnight, the phone buzzed again. This time a text. "We're coming to see you. Tomorrow." No question mark. No request. A statement. I stared at it for a long time, then set the phone face down on the table. When the sun rose the next morning, I was ready. I'd already spoken to the director at Willow Haven, explained the situation, asked them not to let any visitors in without my permission. She nodded, her tone firm but kind. "They'll be turned away, Mrs. Hart. Don't you worry." But worry has a way of sneaking in through the cracks. By noon I was pacing the room, my palms damp, every sound outside making me flinch. Then, around 2 o'clock, I heard it, the sound of raised voices near the reception desk. Helen knocked lightly on my door a few minutes later. "They're here," she said. Your son and that wife of his. You want me to tell them to leave? I took a deep breath. No. Let them wait. She arched an eyebrow. You sure? Yes, I said, straightening my shoulders. I think it's time I let them hear what silence really sounds like. I didn't go out to meet them. Not yet. I just stood behind the door, listening to their voices grow smaller, angrier, desperate. For years, I'd been the one chasing after explanations. Now I was the one deciding when or if they'd get one. I used to imagine that when I finally stood face to face with Daniel again, I'd have a speech ready. Something strong and precise, the kind of words that could make people understand the pain they caused. But when the moment actually came, all that disappeared. Because sometimes silence says it all. They were waiting in the lobby. Daniel, pacing like he was late for a meeting, and Kendra sitting stiffly in one of the floral-patterned chairs, her arms crossed, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown she didn't deserve. When I walked in, they both turned. Daniel's face softened in that practiced way. The one he used when he wanted something. Mom, he said, stepping forward. Finally. I stopped a few feet away. Daniel. He opened his mouth to speak again, but I raised a hand. Before you start, I need you to understand something. You don't get to show up and expect a welcome. You don't get to rewrite what you did. Kendra sighed loudly, like she was already bored. May, we didn't come here to fight. We came to talk like adults. Then maybe act like one, I said. Her eyebrows shot up. Excuse me. I looked straight at her, calm, steady. I said act like one. Because adults don't abandon family members in public places, and then call it a misunderstanding. Daniel glanced at her, clearly uncomfortable. Mom, can we please not do this here? This is my home, I said evenly. I'll do it wherever I please. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. We thought we were helping you. You weren't yourself after Dad died. You were crying all the time, talking about selling things. So you left me at an airport. I interrupted. That was your version of help. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. You're twisting it. No, Daniel, I said, my voice firm. I'm just repeating it. For a moment, the air between us went still. Kendra shifted, tapping her nails against her purse, her tone clipped. Look, maybe things got out of hand. We said things we shouldn't have. You did too. But cutting us off entirely, that's cruel, May. Smiled small and sharp. Cruel, said. No. Cruel is pretending to love someone while planning their absence. Daniel's jaw clenched. You're making us sound like monsters. Then maybe stop acting like them, I said. The room went silent again. Even the receptionist pretended to busy herself with papers that didn't need organizing. Finally, Daniel's voice cracked just enough to sound real. Mom, we messed up. Okay. We thought you'd forgive us. You always do. And there it was, the truth behind everything. They hadn't come for closure. They'd come for confirmation. That I was still the same woman who'd fix what they broke. I did forgive you, I said quietly. I just didn't forget. That's the part that scares you. Kendra stood abruptly. You're being ridiculous. You're letting some lawyer manipulate you into thinking we're the bad guys. I took a slow step forward, close enough that she had to tilt her head to keep eye contact. No, Kendra. The only manipulation that ever happened was yours. The guilt trips. Pity smiles. The way you used family like a leash. Her face flushed red. You have no right. I have every right, I said, my tone like stone. Because I earned mine. Every dollar. Every scar. Every piece of peace I have left. Daniel's voice broke again. Mom, please. Don't do this. Don't throw us away. I stared at him. At the boy I once carried through storms, who now couldn't stand in one without blaming the rain. I'm not throwing you away, Daniel, I said softly. You did that all by yourself. He blinked hard, his throat moving like he was trying not to cry. For a fleeting second, I almost reached out, the mother in me twitching like an old instinct. But then I remembered the cold tile floor of that airport. The way his back looked as he walked away. "Oh, not this time." I turned toward the door. "You both should leave. There's nothing left to take." Kendra scoffed. "You'll regret this." I looked over my shoulder. "Maybe. But at least it'll be my regret, not yours." Then I walked out. My heart pounded all the way back to my room. When I shut the door behind me, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed slow and steady, like someone learning what freedom actually feels like. But peace never comes without its price. And later that night, when I opened my email and saw the words "Notice of Intent to Contest Will," I realized my story wasn't over yet. It was just getting started. The email glared at me from the screen like a challenge. Notice of Intent to Contest Will. There it was, official, cold, and utterly predictable. I read it twice, then 3 more times, until the words blurred into the same old message I'd been hearing my entire life. You don't get to choose your own peace. I leaned back in the chair, exhaled slowly, and whispered to the empty room, "Of course." The next morning I called Henry. He answered on the second ring, voice calm as ever. "I was expecting your call, May." "They're contesting it," I said flatly. "I know," he replied. "The papers came through my office first. They don't have much of a case, but that doesn't mean they won't make noise." "Noise," I repeated. "That's all they've ever made." He chuckled softly, then grew serious. "They'll try to paint you as confused, emotionally unstable, maybe even unfit. It's what people do when they lose control over something they thought they owned." "They never owned me," I said. "I know that," he said gently. "Now we'll make sure everyone else does too." After we hung up, I sat at my small kitchen table for a long time, staring at the mug of coffee I'd already let go cold. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was just tired. Tired of explaining my worth to people who never saw it unless it benefited them. That afternoon, Helen found me in the courtyard, trimming dead leaves off a row of marigolds. "You look like you just buried a body," she said. I smiled faintly. "Maybe I did. Just not the kind that bleeds." She tilted her head. "Your son." "Worse," I said. "His lawyer." Helen chuckled, then handed me her iced tea. "You'll win. You've got that quiet fire. The kind that scares people who live off taking advantage of others." Her faith in me felt heavy and warm, the kind of comfort that makes you sit a little straighter. Days turned into weeks, and the legal process churned on. Henry handled most of it, but every time an email came through with Daniel's name, my chest tightened like an old wound reopening. They said I wasn't thinking clearly. That Kendra and Daniel had always acted in my best interest. That I had been manipulated by outsiders. Funny how people use the word outsiders when they mean someone who actually helped. Henry built the response carefully. "We'll let their own contradictions speak louder than we ever could," he told me. I trusted him. But part of me couldn't help feeling like this wasn't just a legal fight. It was a moral one. A mother's last stand for her own narrative. One night, unable to sleep, I sat by the window, staring out at the moonlight on the courtyard fountain. It shimmered like something pure, untouchable. I whispered into the stillness. "They can take the paperwork, the names, the words, but not the truth." Because the truth was simple. I had loved them. Fully. Without condition. And they had loved the version of me that gave without limits. But that version was gone. When the hearing date finally came, I dressed the way Ray used to like. Navy skirt, white blouse, hair pulled back neatly. Not to impress anyone, but to remind myself who I was. A woman who had lived, built, lost, and survived. Henry met me outside the courthouse steps. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. Inside, Daniel avoided my eyes. Kendra didn't bother pretending to cry. The judge looked at me kindly. Maybe she saw the kind of pain that doesn't need explaining. Henry presented everything clearly, calmly. The new will, the timeline, the motive behind the changes. Then he finished with something that silenced even the shuffle of papers in the room. He said, "Your Honor, this isn't about money. It's about autonomy." My client was left behind, humiliated, and treated as disposable. What she's done isn't revenge. It's reclamation. For the first time in months I felt seen. Not pitted. When the judge ruled in my favor, the air in my chest finally loosened. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there quietly as the gavel fell, the sound echoing like closure. Outside, Daniel called after me. "Mom, wait." I turned once, met his eyes. "You lost more than an inheritance today, Daniel. You lost your mother's trust. And that's worth more than anything you could have fought for." Then I walked away. The wind caught the edge of my hair, cool and soft. It carried the scent of rain, that first hint before the storm breaks. But for me, it didn't smell like warning anymore. Smelled like freedom. People think that when you win, there's a rush, a surge of joy, a feeling of triumph. But victory, real victory, is quiet. It's heavy. It sits with you like the sound of rain after thunder. Peaceful, yes, but a little haunting too. The courthouse doors closed behind me, and I just stood there for a while, letting the world catch up. The sky was gray, the air thick with the smell of wet pavement. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to go home to defend myself, explain myself, or prove myself. I was free. But freedom is strange when you've spent most of your life giving it away. I drove back to Willow Haven with the windows down. The wind tangled my hair, and I didn't bother fixing it. There was something beautifully human about the mess of it, like life, imperfect but honest. When I arrived, Helen was sitting on the bench near the garden, feeding breadcrumbs to a couple of stubborn sparrows. She grinned when she saw me. Well, you've got that look." "What look?" I asked. "The look of a woman who just buried a battle and dug up her peace instead." I laughed softly, sinking onto the bench beside her. "It's over." Helen nodded. "Good. Now comes the hard part." "What's that?" "Learning how to live again without the noise." She was right. I'd spent so long reacting to grief, to betrayal, to guilt, that I'd forgotten what stillness felt like. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a cup of tea and no phone in sight. I opened the window, let the night air drift in. The cicadas hummed, the air smelled like earth, and for the first time in years I realized something. Peace doesn't feel like winning. It feels like breathing. Thought of Ray. Of the way he used to say, "You can't start over until you stop trying to fix what's gone." He'd been right all along. A week later I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I didn't need one. I knew the handwriting. Daniel's. My heart skipped once. Then again. I almost threw it out, but curiosity, that old stubborn thing, won. Inside was a single page. "Mom, I don't know if this means anything now. I know I can't undo what I did. I don't even expect forgiveness anymore. But I wanted you to know I've been thinking about Dad. About the kind of man he was. And I realized I haven't been anything like him. I don't blame you for cutting us out. You did what you had to. I hope one day I can do something worth being proud of again." No signature. No apology. But there was something in those lines. A flicker of accountability, small but real. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my journal. Not because I forgave him, not yet, but because healing isn't about erasing the hurt. It's about understanding it enough to let it rest. The next morning I joined Helen for breakfast. She handed me a newspaper and said, "They're hiring a community outreach coordinator. You'd be perfect." I blinked. Me. "I'm retired, remember?" She smiled. "Retired doesn't mean finished." And just like that, a spark lit inside me. I hadn't realized how much I missed purpose. Not the kind that comes from taking care of others, but the kind that reminds you you're still capable of building something new. That afternoon I filled out the application. When they called me in for an interview, I wore my favorite blouse. The one Ray used to say made me look ready to conquer something. And maybe I was. That night, I walked through the garden before bed. The air was cool, the marigolds swaying gently under the porch lights. I thought about everything I'd lost, and everything I'd gained because of it. I whispered into the air, "You were right, Ray. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Then I smiled, slow and sure, because deep down, I knew this story still had one last chapter left. Not of revenge, but of renewal. You know you've started healing when you stop waiting for the knock. And that's exactly when it comes. It had been 3 months since the court hearing. 3 months of calm mornings, watercolor afternoons, and laughter echoing through Willow Haven's sunlit halls. 3 months of learning how to live without explaining myself to anyone. Then one Thursday evening, just as I was setting my mug down, there it was, a soft knock on the door. Not hurried, not angry, hesitant. I opened it, and for a moment, all the air left my chest. Daniel. He stood there looking smaller somehow. Thinner, older, like guilt had been eating at him from the inside out. His hands were buried in his jacket pockets. His shoulders tense like he was bracing for impact. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. For a second, neither of us spoke. The last time I'd seen him, it was in a courthouse hallway. His eyes burning with defiance. Now, all I saw was my son, the boy who used to scrape his knees and run crying into my arms. "Daniel," I said finally. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he murmured. I needed to see you. Just once." There was no demand in his voice this time. No pleading for inheritance. No hidden motives behind his words. Just something raw, honest. I stepped aside slowly. "Come in." He hesitated, then crossed the threshold like someone afraid of breaking something sacred. His eyes roamed the room, the photos on the shelf, the chair by the window, the neatness of a life rebuilt without him in it. "This place suits you," he said softly. "It does," I replied. He nodded, his gaze falling to the floor. "Kendra's gone." I blinked. "Gone. She left," he said. "After everything that happened. She said she couldn't live with someone who let his own mother cut him out." He gave a bitter laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess karma works fast." I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only language that tells the truth. "I've been trying," he said after a pause. "Got a new job. Started therapy. I've been thinking about Dad a lot." At that, my heart ached, that deep, familiar pull of love and sorrow twisted together. "He was a good man," I said. Daniel nodded, his throat tightening. "Yeah, he was." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then quietly he said, "I read about Second Haven, the place you left everything to. They're doing good work, Mom. Real good work. I'm volunteering there now." That caught me off guard. "You're what?" He smiled faintly, eyes wet. "Yeah. Figured I'd try to build something instead of taking for once." Something in my chest cracked open then. Not pain, not forgiveness exactly, but something close. Like light slipping through the smallest of cracks. I reached out, placed my hand on his. "I'm glad, Daniel." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I don't expect anything, Mom. Not your trust, not your money, not even forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. Get it now. What it feels like to be left behind." And in that moment, all the anger I'd been carrying, all the hurt and betrayal, softened, not because he deserved it, but because I did. I squeezed his hand. "You can't change the past, Daniel. But you can choose what kind of man you become from here." He swallowed hard. "I'm trying. I know." When he finally stood to leave, the sun had set. The courtyard lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the hallway. At the door, he turned back once more. "Thank you for letting me in," he said. I smiled faintly. "Don't thank me for that, son. Thank yourself for knocking." After he left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the lights outside blur into soft halos. My reflection looked older, yes, but lighter, freer. Maybe this was what healing really looked like. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. Still, as I turned away from the window, I felt it. The quiet hum of life moving forward again. A new chapter calling my name. Because my story wasn't ending here. It was finally beginning where it should have all along, with me. There's a certain kind of mourning you never forget. Not because something happened, but because nothing did. No noise. No calls. No waiting for someone to fix what broke. Just peace. That's how it was the day I realized I was finally okay. I sat by the garden, the sun just barely rising, a cup of coffee warming my hands. The world felt softer, slower, kinder. The marigolds were blooming again. Bright, defiant little bursts of orange that refused to die, no matter the season. I guess that's what I'd become too. A woman who refused to wither. I'd been through betrayal, heartbreak, and the kind of loneliness that carves its name into your bones. But now, sitting there with the smell of wet earth and the hum of morning life around me, I finally understood something simple. Pain doesn't mean your story is over. It just means a new chapter is about to begin. The past didn't disappear, and it didn't have to. It just learned to sit quietly beside me, no longer shouting, no longer defining me. Helen joined me a few minutes later, 2 mugs in her hands. "You've got that look again," she teased. Smiled. "What look?" "The one that says you've made peace with your ghosts." I laughed softly. "Maybe I have." She sat down beside me, watching the sun climb. "You ever think about going back? Seeing him again?" I shook my head. "No. Some doors are meant to stay closed. But that doesn't mean I haven't forgiven what's behind them." Helen nodded, and for a while we just sat there. 2 women who had seen enough life to know that peace isn't given. It's earned, one heartbreak at a time. Later that day I went back inside and opened my journal, the one I started the day I was left behind. The first page was a mess of shaky handwriting, anger, confusion, disbelief. I flipped through page after page, until I reached the last one. This time I didn't write out of pain. I wrote out of gratitude. To the woman I used to be. Thank you for surviving what you thought would break you. You were never weak. You were waiting to remember who you were. You didn't lose everything. You simply lost what was never meant to stay. I closed the journal, feeling something loosen inside my chest. That night, I hosted a small gathering in the common room. Just a few of us from Willow Haven. We shared stories, laughed, cried a little too. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about what came next. When it was my turn to speak, I told them this. People will try to convince you that your worth depends on who stays. But the truth is, sometimes love walks away so that you can finally find yourself standing. Don't chase the ones who left. Build something beautiful in the space they abandoned. A hush fell over the room. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel forgotten. Felt seen. And maybe that's the real ending. Not revenge, not closure, but the quiet knowing that you've turned your pain into purpose. As the night faded and people drifted off to bed, I sat by the window one last time. The moonlight spilled across the floor, soft and silver. I whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone, not even to Ray, but to life itself for not letting me give up. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about what I lost. It was about what I found when I finally stopped looking back. And maybe that's what I want anyone listening to remember. You are not the things they took from you. You are what you choose to rebuild afterward. Thanks for being here. If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe and share your own experience in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice matters.